The rain-slicked streets of Busan gleamed under the sodium lamps, the harbor's salty tang mingling with the exhaust from idling trucks at the docks. Ji-yeon Park clutched her umbrella tighter, her nurse's scrub still damp from the evening shift at the overcrowded hospital. At 32, she had built a life of quiet routines. Long hours stitching wounds from bar fights and factory accidents, evenings spent in her cramped apartment overlooking the restless sea. But tonight, as she hurried toward the bus stop, a shadow detached from the alleyway, an old man with a hunched gait and eyes like polished obsidian. He moved with the deliberate slowness of someone who had outlived too many storms, his threadbare coat flapping in the wind. Ji-yeon tensed, her hand slipping into her pocket for the pepper spray she kept there. The city had its undercurrents, smugglers whispering in the fish markets, rival crews marking territory with graffiti that vanished by dawn. But this man didn't approach with menace. He stopped a respectful distance away, his face etched with lines that spoke of decades under the same grey skies. "Excuse me, miss," he rasped, his voice carrying the faint burr of Jeju dialect. "Are you Ji-yeon, Park Ji-yeon, from the River District?" She nodded warily, the bus's headlights sweeping past without slowing. How did he know her name? Her mind raced through the faces from the ER, patients, colleagues, maybe a lost relative from her fragmented childhood. Her parents had died in a car crash when she was 5, or so the records said. She'd been raised in foster homes, piecing together her identity from faded photos and vague memories of cherry blossoms and a father's stern voice. The old man glanced over his shoulder, as if expecting company in the empty street. "I knew your father, Kenji Tanaka. He was important, a man who commanded respect from Yokohama to here." He pulled back his coat sleeve, revealing a jagged scar snaking from wrist to elbow, puckered white against leathery skin. "This is his mark. Your Japanese mafia boss father left me this. Then he vanished with you forever." Ji-yeon's breath caught, the umbrella slipping from her fingers to clatter on the pavement. Tanaka, the name stirred something buried, a lullaby in Japanese, the scent of green tea and gun oil. She'd always assumed her Korean birth certificate was a formality, her features a mix of her mother's heritage. But Mafia, Yakuza syndicates didn't vanish into thin air. They left trails of blood and grudges. "You're mistaken," she said, stepping back. "My father was no criminal, and I don't know you." He didn't flinch, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made the harbor fog feel colder. "Call me Halabeoji, Grandpa Kim, if it eases you. I was his enforcer once, before the wars between the families tore everything apart. Kenji took you to protect you when the rivals came for his blood, hid you here in the heart of Korean ports, away from the claws of the Inagawa Kai. But now they're stirring again. Ships docking with manifests that don't add up, whispers of a lost heir." The wind howled off the water, carrying the distant clank of cargo cranes and the low hum of security patrols along the pier. Ji-yeon's pulse thrummed in her ears. She should walk away, flag a cab, report this to the police, but the scar gleamed accusingly, a roadmap of secrets she'd never charted. Her life had been one of careful detachment, no entanglements, no risks beyond the ER's controlled chaos. Yet here was a thread pulling her toward the abyss. "Come with me," Grandpa Kim urged, nodding toward a black sedan idling at the curb, its tinted windows reflecting the rain like oil slicks. "Just one meeting. There's a man who needs to know you're alive. He owes your father a debt deeper than the sea. If you refuse, they might find you first, the watchers who never sleep." She hesitated, the bus long gone, the street emptying as midnight approached. Who was this he? A rival boss, an old ally with his own agenda. The scar burned in her memory, a tangible link to the father she'd mythologized. Against every instinct screaming caution, curiosity and a flicker of belonging won out. One meeting, she agreed, sliding into the sedan's leather back seat as the door clicked shut behind her. The car pulled away smoothly, weaving through the labyrinth of warehouses where shipping containers loomed like silent sentinels. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and faint cigarette smoke. The driver, a silent figure in a crisp suit, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. Grandpa Kim sat beside her, his presence both comforting and unnerving, like a relic from a storm she'd never weathered. As they crossed the bridge over the Nakdong River, Ji-yeon caught a glimpse in the side mirror, a motorcycle peeling out from the shadows, its single headlight trailing them like a predator's gaze. Was it coincidence, or the first sign of the web closing in? She pressed her forehead to the cool glass, wondering if she'd just stepped from one cage into another. And who was waiting at the end of this drive, ready to claim the daughter of a ghost? The sedan hummed along the rain-lashed coastal road, the Nakdong River's dark expanse flashing by in glimpses between the wipers' rhythmic sweep. Ji-yeon gripped the armrest, the leather creaking under her fingers, as the city lights of Busan blurred into the industrial sprawl of the outskirts. Warehouses squatted like forgotten giants, their corrugated walls slick with moisture, the air inside the car thick with the scent of wet earth and the faint acrid bite of diesel from passing freighters. Grandpa Kim sat motionless beside her, his scarred arm now hidden again, but its image lingered like a brand on her thoughts. She stole glances at him, searching for tells, a twitch in his jaw, a flicker in those obsidian eyes. Enforcer. The word evoked grainy news clips of triad busts and Yakuza tattoos inked over prison bars, but this man seemed more like a weathered dock worker than a killer. "Who is this man we're meeting?" She asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "And why now, after all these years?" Grandpa Kim's lips curved in a thin smile, not quite reaching his eyes. "Min-ho Kang. He runs the ports from here to Incheon, legitimate shipping on paper, but the real cargo moves in the shadows. Your father saved his life during a raid in '95, pulled him from a burning freighter off Yokohama. Min-ho's code is simple, debts repaid, no matter the years. He's heard rumors, the Inagawa Kai sniffing around old manifests, cross-referencing names from the archives. Your name popped up in a hospital log, tied to that river incident last month." The river. Ji-yeon's mind reeled back to the night she'd pulled a half-drowned boy from the churning waters near the Gwangan Bridge. The child had been feverish, muttering in Japanese before the ambulance lights swallowed the scene. She'd dismissed it as trauma, but now... The boy I saved. He wasn't just some kid, was he? Kim nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. Min-ho's grandson. The family keeps their own close, but rivals got wind. They staged the accident to lure him out, test the old man's reach. "You stepping in?" It was fate, or your father's ghost watching over. The driver, a stocky man with a buzz cut and a gold chain glinting at his collar, cleared his throat without turning. "Eyes in the mirror, boss. That bike's been on us since the bridge." Ji-yeon's heart stuttered. She twisted to peer out the rear window, the motorcycle's headlight bobbing closer through the spray. Its rider hunched low like a shadow come alive. No plates visible, just the growl of the engine cutting through the storm. "Who is it?" she whispered. "Could be a scout," Kim replied evenly, though his hand slipped inside his coat. "Inagawa don't send invitations. They probe weaknesses, follow a tail, plant a tracker." He rapped on the partition. "Lose him, Ji-ho." The driver, Ji-ho, nodded, accelerating smoothly as they veered off the main road onto a narrower artery lined with rusting shipping containers. The sedan fish-tailed slightly on the wet gravel, tires hissing, the river's salty brine seeping through the vents. Ji-yeon pressed back into the seat, her nurse's instincts kicking in, assess, stabilize, extract. But this wasn't a trauma bay. There were no monitors beeping, no PV lines to secure. Just the primal surge of adrenaline, sharp as the antiseptic sting of her ER shifts. They plunged deeper into the industrial maze, sodium lamps casting elongated shadows that danced like specters across the hulks of abandoned cranes. The motorcycle pursued, weaving aggressively, its engine revving in challenge. Ji-ho executed a sharp turn into a fog-shrouded lot, the car bouncing over potholes filled with rainwater. For a moment, the bike faltered, swallowed by the gloom, but then its light pierced the mist again, relentless. "Call it in," Kim muttered to Ji-ho, pulling a burner phone from his pocket. A cheap flip model, its screen cracked like his voice. He punched in a number, speaking low in clipped Korean. "Shadow on the east approach. Black Kawasaki. No tags. Prep the secondary." Ji-yeon listened, piecing it together. Burner phones for deniability, secondary routes mapped in advance. Criminal logistics she'd only read about in procedural dramas, now unfolding in real time. Her father's world? If Kenji Tanaka had been Yakuza, these were the threads he'd woven. Alliances across borders, debts that spanned oceans. But why hide her? And why resurface now, dragging her into this convoy chase? The sedan burst onto a service road paralleling the docks, the harbor's chaos unfolding ahead, cranes groaning like weary beasts, the low thunder of waves against concrete pilings. Ji-ho floored it, closing on a chain-link gate manned by two guards in dark jackets, their faces illuminated by the glow of handheld radios. The gate swung open just as the motorcycle closed the gap, its rider gunning for a ram. "Hold on!" Ji-ho barked. The car surged through, the guards leveling flashlights that caught the bike's approach. One shouted into his radio, the other drawing a compact pistol. Suppressed, Ji-yeon noted with a chill, the kind used for quiet enforcements. Shots cracked, muffled pops lost in the storm, and the motorcycle swerved, tires screeching as it veered into a stack of pallets, wood splintered, the headlight shattering in a spray of sparks, but the rider kicked free, vanishing into the shadows before the guards could close in. Ji-ho didn't slow, guiding the sedan into a concealed garage beneath a looming warehouse, the door rumbling shut behind them like a tomb ceiling. The engine cut, leaving only the patter of rain on metal and Ji-yeon's ragged breaths. Kim pocketed the phone, his expression unreadable. "Close call. They're bolder than I thought." She unbuckled, legs unsteady, as she stepped out into the dim space, fluorescent strips buzzing overhead. The air hummed with the distant whir of generators, shelves lined with unmarked crates that whispered of contraband, fish, or something sharper like the grudges Kim spoke of. "This isn't just about the boy, is it?" she pressed, following him toward a steel door. "They want me because of my father. What did he take from them?" Kim paused, hand on the latch. "More than blood. A ledger, codes to old roots, shipments that could topple empires. He vanished with it, and you. Minho will explain. But trust this, in our world, protection isn't given. It's earned in the dark." The door swung open to a dimly lit corridor, the scent of polished oak and faint cigar smoke wafting out. Footsteps echoed from within, measured, authoritative. Ji-yeon squared her shoulders, the scar's memory fueling her resolve. But as she crossed the threshold, a faint click sounded from the garage shadows, a door she'd sworn was locked. Had the rider slipped in during the chaos, or was it one of their own watching from the inside? The corridor stretched ahead like a vein in the warehouse's underbelly, its walls paneled in dark wood that absorbed the low hum of ventilation fans overhead. Ji-yeon followed Grandpa Kim, her sneakers silent on the polished concrete floor, but the faint click from the garage echoed in her mind, a loose latch or something more deliberate. She glanced back, but the steel door had sealed shut behind them, its hydraulic hiss fading into the murmur of distant machinery. The air grew warmer here, laced with the rich undertone of aged whiskey and the subtle polish of expensive leather, a stark contrast to the storm-ravaged docks outside. Kim led her to a set of double doors at the end, etched with subtle motifs of crashing waves and coiled dragons, symbols that bridged Korean Hanok elegance with Yakuza flair. He knocked twice, sharp and rhythmic, before pushing them open. The room beyond was a sanctuary amid the industrial grit. A penthouse office disguised in the warehouse's heart, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbour through one-way glass. Rain streaked the panes, blurring the crane's skeletal outlines into ghostly silhouettes. A long mahogany table dominated the space, flanked by high-backed chairs, and at its head sat Min-ho Kang. He was in his late 50s, broad-shouldered with silver threading his close-cropped hair, his suit tailored to perfection over a frame that spoke of disciplined power rather than brute force. His eyes, sharp as the ledger Kim had mentioned, fixed on Ji-yeon as she entered, appraising without judgment. A half-smoked cigar rested in an ashtray, its smoke curling lazily toward a recessed ceiling fan. Two men stood at the room's edges, security, their postures relaxed but hands near hip holsters, earpieces coiled like snakes against their collars. "Ji-yeon Park," Min-ho said, rising with a nod that carried the weight of old-world courtesy. His voice was smooth, accented with the port city's cadence, but undercut by the gravel of too many late-night negotiations. "Or should I say, Tanaka Ji-yeon, sit. You've had a rough ride getting here." She hesitated, then took the chair opposite him, the leather sighing under her weight. Kim settled beside her, his presence a buffer against the room's invisible pressures. The table held a decanter of soju and crystal glasses, but no one poured. This wasn't a toast, it was an interrogation veiled in hospitality. "You know my name," she said flatly, meeting his gaze. "But I don't know why I'm here. Grandpa Kim says you owe my father a debt. If that's true, cash it out and let me go. I have a shift in 4 hours." Min-ho's lips twitched, not quite a smile. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers over a leather-bound folder that lay unopened between them. "Direct, like Kenji. He pulled me from that freighter fire. Inagawa torched it to sink a rival shipment. I was 25, green, choking on smoke while the crew abandoned ship. Your father dove back in, dragged me to a lifeboat, said debts aren't optional in this life. I've honored that, kept tabs on his trail after he vanished in '98. The rivals hit his compound hard, thought they'd wiped the Tanakas clean. But you slipped through." Ji-yeon's throat tightened, the room's warmth suddenly cloying. She could almost smell the green tea from her fragmented memories, hear the stern voice barking orders in Japanese. "Slipped through. He left me, hid me in foster care with a fake name. If he was so powerful, why abandon his daughter to scrape by?" Kim shifted, his scarred hand drumming softly on the table, a subtle tell of unease. Min-ho opened the folder, sliding a faded photograph across. A younger Kenji, stern-faced in a dark suit, cradling a toddler with Ji-yeon's eyes. Beside him, a woman, her mother, smiled faintly, the background a Yokohama skyline. "He didn't abandon you, he buried you." The Inagawa wanted his roots, smuggling lanes from Tokyo to Busan, coded in that ledger. It held manifests for everything, silks, electronics, the kind of cargo that funds wars. Kenji took it when he fled, burned the duplicates. They hunted for years, but the trail went cold, until now. The photo's edges were worn, as if handled often. Ji-yeon traced it with a finger, the paper cool against her skin. "Now, because of the boy I saved?" Min-ho nodded, closing the folder with a soft snap. "Haru, my grandson. The accident was no slip, pushed from a balcony during a family visit to the docks. Inagawa's probing, testing if old bloodlines endure. Your name surfaced in the hospital report, a nurse with Tanaka features saving the air. They cross-checked plates from the ER van, pulled security footage, sloppy on our end. A guard rotation overlapped, let a watcher slip in. Outside, thunder rumbled, vibrating the windows like a warning. Ji-yeon leaned back, the chair's creak amplifying her doubt. This world of ledgers and rotations felt too real, too orchestrated. Human error in the form of a missed shift. Technology as simple as hacked CCTV feeds, but it pulled at her autonomy, this sudden inheritance of shadows. And what? You want me to play bait? I stitch wounds, not start wars. My ethics don't bend for ghosts. Min-ho's eyes softened fractionally, a rare crack in the facade. No bait, protection, join us, learn the code. Kenji's rule, innocence untouched, debts eternal. I've lost too much to rivals. My wife to a car accident in '05, staged breaks. You remind me of what he fought for. Stay tonight. We have safe houses, rotations to cover you. Refuse, and the watchers find you alone. Kim cleared his throat, glancing at the door. The click in the garage, Ji-ho's checking, could be nothing, a rat in the vents. Or their man planted during the chase. Tension coiled in the room, the cigar smoke thickening like fog. One of the guards murmured into his earpiece, his face tightening. Ji-yeon's pulse quickened. Surveillance wasn't just external. It could be internal, a turncoat's whisper or a tampered lock. She stood, the decision pressing like the storm's weight. Loyalty to a father she barely remembered, or the independence she'd clawed from foster scraps. Min-ho watched her, possessive yet restrained, the push-pull of his world mirroring her own fears. Before she could answer, the guard's voice cut through. "Boss, intruders in the vents, moving fast, lockdown." Alarms whooped faintly from the corridor, red lights pulsing like blood. Ji-yeon froze as shadows shifted beyond the one-way glass, a figure on the docks signaling with a flashlight in Morse-like bursts. Was it a diversion, or the real threat closing in? And if they breached the warehouse, what secrets would spill with the violence? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The red lights throbbed like a heartbeat in the penthouse office, casting erratic shadows across the mahogany table and the faces frozen in the haze of cigar smoke. Ji-yeon pressed against the wall, her back to the one-way glass, the harbor's storm-lashed chaos, a blurred backdrop beyond. The alarm's wail cut through the ventilation hum, sharp and insistent, pulling the room into lockdown mode. Doors sealing with pneumatic sighs, the distant clank of metal grates dropping over vents. Min-ho Kang stood abruptly, his chair scraping back, while the two guards drew their suppressed pistols in fluid motions, barrels sweeping the corners like trained hounds. "Flank the vents," Min-ho ordered, his voice a low bark that sliced the tension. Ji-ho, status on the garage. He tapped his earpiece, the coil wire taut against his neck, coordinating with unseen teams. No panic in his tone, just the clipped efficiency of a man who'd danced this edge before. Grandpa Kim rose slower, his scarred hand dipping into his coat for a compact revolver, the metal glinting dully under the pulsing reds. Ji-yeon's nurse training surged, triaged the threats. Secure the exits. But here the patients were armed shadows, and the wounds would be deliberate. One guard, tall with a faint tattoo peeking from his cuff, edged toward a ceiling panel, his flashlight beam piercing the grill. Movement confirmed, boss. Single intruder, light build, tools in play, probably a wire cutter. The words hung heavy, evoking images of breached security. A guard rotation missed again, or worse, an inside job. Ji-yeon scanned the room, her eyes catching the leather folder Min-ho had closed. The ledger's shadow loomed in her mind. Codes, manifests, the kind of secrets that turned men into ghosts. Had the Inagawa planted someone during the chase, slipping through the garage's chaos like smoke? A metallic scrape echoed from above, followed by a muffled thud as the panel buckled. The guard fired twice, suppressed pops that barely disturbed the air, sparks flying as bullets ricocheted off ductwork. "Missed!" He's dropping! The intruder tumbled through in a controlled roll, landing in a crouch amid the office's plush rug. A slim figure in black tactical gear, face obscured by a balaclava. No dramatic entrance. Just the pragmatic drop of a professional, knife already flashing toward the nearest guard. Chaos erupted in tight bursts. The guard lunged, grappling the intruder in a tangle of limbs, the knife skittering across the floor to clatter against the table leg. Minho circled, pistol trained, while Kim covered Ji-yeon, shoving her behind the bar cart with its crystal decanters rattling like bones. She crouched, heart pounding against her ribs, the scent of spilled soju mixing with the metallic tang of gun oil. Outside, the signaling figure on the docks persisted, flashlight Morse code, perhaps coordinates or a countdown, visible only to her heightened gaze through the glass's distortion. "Secure him!" Minho snapped. The second guard joined the fray, pinning the intruder's arms with a knee to the back. A quick zip tie from a pocket kit bound wrists and ankles, the plastic biting into fabric. The balaclava came off with a yank, revealing a young man, mid-20s, Korean features sharpened by fear, sweat beading on his brow. No Yakuza ink visible, just a plain chain necklace with a small jade pendant glinting under the lights. "Who sent you?" Minho demanded, crouching to level his pistol at the man's temple. The intruder's eyes darted, defiant but flickering with calculation. No immediate answer, just labored breaths and the faint wheeze of a compromised rib from the fall. Ji-yeon edged forward, curiosity overriding caution. This wasn't abstract anymore. It was flesh and error, a human pawn in the machine. "He's hurt," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline crash. "Let me check, could be a tracker embedded." Minho glanced at her, a flicker of respect in his eyes, the possessiveness tempered by her poise. He nodded, and she knelt, palpating the intruder's side with clinical detachment. Bruised, maybe cracked, but no immediate bleed. She slipped a hand into his pocket, pulling out a burner phone, screen locked, but vibrating with an incoming text she couldn't see. "Busan plates on his gear," the pinned guard reported, rifling through a small pack. "Stolen from a dockside rental 2 nights ago. And this." He held up a micro SD card, tiny and innocuous. "Plugged into a camera rig, probably for live feed." Kim grunted, holstering his revolver. "Inagawa Scout. They map from the inside now. Vents. Weak points. Your rotation's compromised, Minho. Someone tipped the overlap." The boss's jaw tightened, the human conflict etching deeper lines on his face. Loyalty versus suspicion. His code demanded trust in the family, but betrayal's sting was personal, an echo of his wife's staged end. Run the card and get him to the holding room. Quietly. The guards hauled the intruder away, his struggles muffled by a gag, leaving the office in uneasy quiet. The alarms cut off abruptly, the red lights fading to amber standby, but the storm outside raged on, waves slamming the pilings like accusations. Minho turned to Ji-yeon, his gaze holding hers with that restrained intensity. A pull toward his world, autonomy be damned. "You handled that like you were born to it." Kenji's blood. He poured 2 glasses of soju, the liquid glinting amber offering one. "The ledger's real. It lists routes your father secured. Safe passages for families fleeing the clans, not just cargo. Inagawa wants it to choke my ports, flood them with their poison. Stay, help us decode it. Your ethics fit our code. Protect the innocent, even if it costs." She took the glass, the cool crystal grounding her. The push-pull ward inside, independence forged in foster isolation versus this sudden legacy, a found family laced with danger. The SD card secrets burned in her thoughts. Camera angles from within, behavioral tells from a turncoat guard. "And if I walk, you can't protect everyone." His smile was wry, shadowed by the window's rain. "I protect what's mine. And you, Ji-yeon, carry his mark, whether you want it or not." Kim's burner buzzed then, a low vibration cutting the moment. He flipped it open, face paling. "Boss, convoys hit on the east tunnel. False alarm or diversion?" The holding room door down the corridor rattled faintly, a guard's shout echoing. Was the intruder alone, or had the signal drawn more wolves to the door? And in the ledger's hidden codes, what price would Ji-yeon pay to claim her father's vanishing truth? The amber standby lights cast a jaundiced glow over the penthouse office, turning the rain-streaked windows into mirrors of unease. Ji-yeon set her soju glass down with a soft clink, the liquid untouched, its sharp rice scent cutting through the lingering haze of cigar smoke and exertion. Minho's burner phone call had shattered the fragile calm, the words "convoy hit" hanging like a noose. Grandpa Kim pocketed his device, his scarred knuckles whitening as he gripped the table's edge, while Minho paced to the one-way glass, peering into the storm's fury. The harbor below churned, freighters rocking against their moorings. The distant wail of sirens blending with the thunder, a symphony of controlled chaos. "Details," Minho demanded into his earpiece, his voice a whip crack. The coil wire tugged at his collar as he listened, face hardening into lines etched by years of such interruptions. Ji-yeon rose, her nurse's instincts overriding the fear coiling in her gut. This wasn't a sterile ER. It was a web of logistics, guard rotations, burner relays, the human error of a compromised tip. The intruder's SD card lay on the table now, slotted into a slim laptop one of the guards had fetched. Its screen flickering with grainy footage, vents mapped in thermal overlays, timestamps aligning with their earlier chase. "3 vehicles down in the east tunnel," Minho relayed, "disconnecting with a jab. Jam on the access road, barricade of overturned containers, no explosives, just brute force. Our escorts fired warning shots, the attackers scattered on foot. But the lead truck's manifest is gone, shipping logs for the week's runs." He turned to Kim, eyes narrowing. "Your call on the holding room. Was that kid a decoy?" Kim shook his head, the Jeju burr roughening his tone. "Planted to draw eyes here while they hit the convoy. Inagawa's playbook. Divide the rotations, exploit the overlap. That jade pendant, family heirloom from their Busan cell. He's no scout, he's bait." Ji-yeon's mind raced, piecing the puzzle like a triage chart. The motorcycle tail, the vent breach, now this tunnel ambush. No high-tech miracles, just stolen plates, insider whispers, the natural bottleneck of rain-slicked roads turning escape into a trap. She stepped closer to the laptop, the keyboard's glow illuminating subtle behavioral tells in the footage, a guard pausing too long at a post, eyes flicking to an unseen signal. "Look," she said, pointing, "frame 47. The rotation sentry, his earpiece light blinks off sync. Tampered feed, or he's relaying to an external line." Minho leaned in, his shoulder brushing hers, a fleeting contact that sent a possessive warmth through the tension, his code of protection clashing with her drive for autonomy. "Sharp eye, Kenji trained you without words." But his praise carried weight, a pull toward entanglement, loyalty tested by the betrayal unfolding. He snapped the laptop shut. "Ji-ho, double the warehouse perimeter, no one in or out till dawn. Kim, you're with me on the tunnel extract." She straightened, the room's warmth now suffocating, the ventilation fans whirring like anxious breaths. "And me, you drag me into this, then lock me in a cage." Her voice held the edge of her ethics. Independence forged in foster anonymity, not this shadowed legacy. The push-pull mirrored the storm outside, Minho's restrained intensity offering safety, but at the cost of her uncharted life. He met her gaze, the silver in his hair catching the light like frost on steel. "Stay put. Decode what you can from the folder. Your father's patterns might flag the missing manifest. The ledger's not just roots, it's safeguards, codes for safe houses that keep innocence clear. If Inagawa cracks it, families like Haru's become targets." His hand hovered near her arm, not touching, the gesture loaded with unspoken vows, debts eternal, power leashed by personal loss. His wife's accident lingered in his eyes, a past shaping this moment's choices. Kim nodded toward the door, revolver holstered but ready. "I'll watch the corridor. That rattle in holding could be the kid signaling his cell." The older man's loyalty shone through, a found family bond tempered by the scar's memory, but suspicion gnawed. Was even he above the fray? As Min-ho and Kim exited, the double doors sealing with a definitive click, Ji-yeon turned back to the leather folder. Alone in the pulsing amber, the harbor's sodium lamps flickered through the glass, illuminating stacks of crates on the docks like silent witnesses. She flipped it open. Pages yellowed with age, handwritten notes in a mix of Japanese kanji and Korean hangul, manifests listing innocuous hauls, silk bolts from Osaka, electronics from Shenzhen, but underlined discrepancies screamed contraband shadows. Vehicle plates cross-referenced to ghost companies, access codes for tunnel side doors, guard shifts annotated with subtle tells. Lee smokes at 0200, blind spot east. Her fingers traced a faded entry. KT vanished 98, daughter to Busan Foster, River District. Protect via Kang Det. Her father's hand, no doubt. A chill unrelated to the storm prickled her skin. This was no myth, just meticulous logistics, burner drops in alleys, discreet ledgers passed hand to hand. But the final page caught her. A sketched map of the East Tunnel, marked with an X near the jam site. Contingency, secondary extract via service ladder. If compromised, burn all. Footsteps echoed from the corridor, heavy, urgent. Ji-yeon snapped the folder shut as the door burst open. Ji-ho bursting in, face slick with rain, a cut above his eye oozing. "Boss is pinned. Ambush wasn't clean. More than scatter. They've blocked the secondary road." Jammed the radios with a signal jammer from a drone overhead. Storms masking it. No supernatural edge. Just cheap tech from the black market. He clutched a dripping satchel, the convoy's salvage, a singed tablet, its screen cracked but alive with partial logs. She grabbed a cloth from the bar cart, pressing it to his wound with practiced efficiency. "How many?" The question slipped out, her role shifting from outsider to reluctant ally, the romance of danger weaving through fear, Min-ho's world claiming her inch by inch. 4 down, minor injuries, but the manifest's carrier, gone. Inagawa's got a mole in the crew, behavioral slip, left his post early. Ji-ho winced as she cleaned the gash, the air thick with antiseptic from her pocket kit, mingling with the warehouse's diesel hum. Outside, lightning cracked, illuminating a shadow flitting between containers, a watcher or phantom. The office intercom crackled then, Min-ho's voice cutting through static. "Ji-yeon, ladder route, get to the tunnel sub-level, Kim's covering." A muffled shout followed, then gunfire, suppressed bursts echoing like distant thunder. She froze, the folder's weight in her hand a anchor to the past. Run to safety, or dive into the fray for the man offering her a fractured family. And in the jammed signal's wake, what betrayal would the missing manifest reveal? A rival's grasp or a turncoat's final play? The intercom's static hissed like a dying breath, Min-ho's voice fracturing through the jammed signal before cutting to gunfire. Sharp, suppressed cracks that reverberated through the warehouse's steel bones. Ji-yeon's hand tightened on the folder, its leather edges biting into her palm, the amber lights flickering as if the storm outside had clawed its way into the power grid. Rain hammered the one-way glass, turning the harbor into a smeared watercolor of sodium glows and churning black water. Ji-ho slumped against the doorframe, the cloth she pressed to his brow now bloodied, his buzz-cut silhouette stark against the corridor's pulsing shadows. "Go!" he urged, voice rough with pain, shoving the satchel toward her. "Ladder access. End of the hall, behind the server rack. Boss needs the contingency." His eyes, bloodshot and urgent, held no room for her hesitation. This was the code in action, debts pulling her deeper into the fray. She nodded, slinging the satchel over her shoulder, the tablet inside a cold weight against her hip, and bolted from the office, the double doors swinging shut with a finality that echoed her pounding heart. The corridor stretched like a vein under pressure, fluorescent strips buzzing erratically overhead, casting her shadow long and erratic across the panelled walls. The air thickened with the metallic tang of ozone from the storm, mingled with the faint, acrid bite of overheated wiring. Footsteps thundered from the holding room direction, a scuffle, a muffled shout, but she didn't pause, veering left into a maintenance alcove where the server rack hummed like a distant generator. Behind it, a grated hatch yawned open, the ladder's rungs slick with condensation dripping from unseen pipes. Ji-yeon descended, the folder tucked under her arm, each step clanging softly in the confined space, the tunnel's chill seeping through her scrubs like river water. Below, the sublevel unfolded into a labyrinth of service tunnels. Concrete walls etched with moisture and the faint graffiti of past workers, names, dates, warnings in faded marker. The storm's fury penetrated here too, a low rumble vibrating the floor, water pooling in shallow depressions that reflected her flashlight's beam from Ji-ho's satchel. She flicked it on, the narrow cone cutting through the gloom, illuminating conduits snaking along the ceiling and the occasional access panel labeled in Korean, East Tunnel, authorized only. The ledger's map burned in her memory, the X marking this very route, a secondary extract designed for jams like this, human ingenuity against natural bottlenecks. A distant explosion rocked the tunnel, muffled, not bombs, but the controlled blast of a staged diversion, containers toppling to block the main road above. Ji-yeon's breath came in measured bursts, her nurses calm, anchoring her amid the rising tension. Surveillance wasn't just eyes, it was the environment turning hostile, jammed radios forcing reliance on wired backups, the storm masking footsteps and signals alike. She pressed on, the satchel's tablet vibrating faintly, its cracked screen alive with partial logs, shipping manifests cross-referenced to plates from the intruder's gear, a behavioral tell flagging Lee, early post-abandon, 2315. The tunnel forked ahead, left toward the east access, right a dead-end service spur. She veered left, the air growing heavier with the brine of the harbor, the walls narrowing until her shoulders brushed concrete. A faint glow emanated from around the bend, headlamps or the red pulse of emergency beacons. She killed her flashlight, edging forward in shadows, heart slamming against her ribs. The push-pull tore at her, autonomy screaming to surface and run, but Min-ho's restrained possessiveness, his code of protection, the legacy of a father who'd vanished to shield her, drew her like gravity. Voices filtered through, low and tense. Min-ho's gravelly timbre, Kim's burr responding. Mole's Lee, confirmed from the tablet ping. He fed the overlap to their Busan cell. A grunt, then the scrape of boots on gravel. Ji-yeon rounded the corner cautiously, the scene unfolding in the dim wash of a portable lantern. Min-ho and Kim crouched behind a concrete barrier, two guards flanking them. Pistols drawn. Beyond, the tunnel mouth opened to the East Road's chaos, overturned containers silhouetted against lightning, rain sheeting in like a curtain. No convoy visible, just the low growl of idling engines from unseen watchers, their headlights cutting fog like knives. Ji-yeon, Min-ho said without turning, his earpiece relaying her approach via a hidden sensor in the ladder. Simple tech, institutional limits bypassed by the family's web. He rose, face streaked with grime, a shallow cut across his knuckles oozing but ignored. His eyes locked on hers, that intense pull laced with relief, loyalty clashing against the fear of loss that shaped him. The manifest's key, routes your father coded to evade Inagawa blockades. If they have it, Haru's safe houses collapse, innocents pay. She thrust the folder forward, pages fluttering in the damp draft. Burn protocols here, side ladder to the docks, unmarked exit. But Lee's out there. He jammed the drone signal himself. Black market rig from the old Yokohama lane. The words spilled out, her independence yielding to the bond forming, a romance forged in the grit of shared peril. Kim snatched the folder, scanning the map with a nod, his scarred arm a reminder of debts eternal. Gunfire erupted then, from the road above, unsuppressed bursts that echoed off the tunnel walls, bullets ricocheting in wild sprays. One guard jerked back, clutching his shoulder, blood blooming dark on his jacket, no gore, just the stark reality of injury under pressure. "They're flushing us!" Kim barked, returning fire with precise shots that forced shadows to duck behind a container. The environment shifted hazardous. A power surge from the storm blacked out the lanterns, plunging them into near darkness broken only by muzzle flashes and lightning strobes. Minho grabbed Ji-yon's arm, his grip firm but not bruising, pulling her toward the side ladder, a rusted grate leading up to the docks. "With me. Kim, cover the extract." They climbed, rungs groaning under their weight, the air alive with the storm's roar and the acrid sting of cordite. Emerging onto the dockside, rain lashed their faces, the wooden planks slick and treacherous, waves crashing against pilings mere feet away. A black SUV idled in the shadows, its engine a low purr amid the chaos, but headlights swept from the road. Inagawa's convoy, closing the noose. Jiho's voice crackled over a backup radio in the satchel. Moles down, turned on his own in the panic, manifest recovered, partial. Victory edged in, but costly. The injured guard's groan fading behind, exposure risking the whole network. Minho bundled her into the SUV, sliding in after. The door slamming as tires spun on wet asphalt. Kim's team piled into a trailing vehicle, the extraction convoy peeling away into the night, leaving the tunnel's mouth smoldering. As they raced along the coastal road, wipers battling the deluge, Minho's hand found hers in the dark back seat, a tentative bridge between possessiveness and respect. "You chose this," he murmured, voice low over the engine's hum. "The code holds because of blood like yours." But the tablet's logs glowed faintly. One entry unresolved, a plate number tracing back to a foster home contact from her past. Was the threat truly routed, or had the Inagawa's grasp extended to her hidden years, pulling another thread from the grave? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The SUV barreled through the storm-swept coastal road, tires hydroplaning on the slick asphalt, the wipers slashing futilely against sheets of rain that blurred the world into a frenzy of sodium lights and shadowed warehouses. Ji-yon gripped the door handle, the leather slick under her palm, as Minho's hand remained clasped over hers in the back seat, an anchor amid the chaos. His touch warm and unyielding, speaking volumes in the silence broken only by the engine's roar and the distant crack of thunder. The trailing vehicle, Kim at its wheel, kept pace, headlights piercing the deluge like defiant eyes. The tablet in the satchel hummed faintly against her thigh, its partial logs a ticking bomb of unresolved secrets. That plate number, tied to a foster home from her childhood, whispering of infiltrations deeper than the Inagawa's probes. "Head for the safe house off Haeundae," Minho instructed the driver, a wiry man named Tae, whose knuckles whitened on the wheel. His voice cut through the cab's humid tension, laced with the gravel of exhaustion, but steady as the port's unyielding tides. "Double back at the overpass, shake any tails. No panic, just the pragmatic rhythm of criminal logistics, alternate routes etched from years of evasion, human error like Lee's betrayal, now a lesson etched in blood and rain." Ji-yon glanced at Minho, his profile etched by passing headlights, silver hair matted, The cut on his knuckles crusted but ignored. The push-pull between them thrummed like the storm, his possessive code offering shelter, her autonomy fraying under the weight of chosen ties. The tablet vibrated again, insistent. She pulled it free, the cracked screen glowing in her lap, illuminating the manifest's fragments, roots coded in her father's hand, safe passages not for cargo, but for families evading clan wars, innocents shielded by ledgers, disguised as trade logs. The flagged entry blinked, plate number matching a van from her foster days in the River District, logged in an Inagawa cross-reference from '98. "They knew," she whispered, voice barely audible over the rain's assault. "Even then, your rivals. They placed me in that home, watched me grow up as bait." Minho's grip tightened, not painfully, but with a restrained intensity that mirrored his internal vows, power leashed by loss, the ghost of his wife's staged accident fueling his restraint. Kenji anticipated it. He fed them false trails, buried you deeper, but the Ledger's burn protocol missed one thread, a contact in the system, a social worker turned informant. His eyes met hers in the dim cab, the revelation landing like a wave. The threat had been organized from her cradle, human networks of surveillance, discreet ledgers passed in foster files, behavioral tells in orphanage visits, turning her life into a long con. No easy vanish. Victory demanded this extraction, the cost already tallied in the injured guard's groan echoing from the trailing SUV. Tay swerved at the overpass, the vehicle fishtailing as they looped onto a service lane lined with rusting shipping containers, their corrugated sides drumming with rain like impatient fingers. Headlights flared in the rear view. A pursuit vehicle, unmarked sedan emerging from the gloom, its engine growl cutting through the storm. "Tail confirmed," Tay muttered. Accelerating into the industrial sprawl, the safe house, a shadowed penthouse atop a nondescript high-rise, its access coded and rotated hourly. But the jammer's echo lingered. Radios crackled with static, forcing visual signals. Flares from Kim's team, brief bursts to guide without words. The chase intensified, the sedan ramming close, bumper kissing theirs in a jolt that sent Ji-yon's head snapping back. Minho drew his pistol, window cracking open to the deluge, firing 2 suppressed shots that pinged off the pursuer's grill. Warning, not kill, adhering to the code. Innocent spared, even in the fray. "They're desperate," he said, reloading with practiced calm. The manifest partials name their mole network. Foster ties, port insiders, expose it and their Busan cell crumbles. Ji-yon's heart raced, the sensory onslaught overwhelming, rain stinging her face through the cracked window, the salty harbor brine mixing with exhaust, the hum of the tablet as it synced to a hidden drive, uploading what fragments remained. Kim's SUV surged ahead, blocking the lane in a calculated pivot, forcing the tail to swerve into a dead-end spur, flanked by chain link and concrete barriers. Tires screeched, the sedan crashing into a stack of pallets with a splintering crunch, its lights shattering in sparks lost to the downpour. No pursuit followed. The driver, likely Lee's handler, abandoned the wreck, vanishing into the shadows, but the damage was done. Their convoy limped into the safe house garage, doors grinding shut against the storm, the air inside thick with the scent of oil and damp concrete. Medics, discreet, off the books, swarmed the trailing vehicle, triaging the wounded guard with efficient hands, his injury a stark cost, shoulder through and through, no vitals lost but mobility scarred. Up in the penthouse, walls lined with reinforced glass overlooking the now calming sea, Minho finally released her hand, turning to face her under the soft glow of recessed lights. The room smelled of fresh linen and faint jasmine from a hidden diffuser, a sanctuary carved from the chaos. Kim slumped into a chair, scarred arm bandaged by one of the medics, his obsidian eyes weary but resolute. The tablet's upload completed with a chime. The ledger's codes now secured in encrypted backups, routes preserved, molds flagged for quiet severance. It's over, Minho said, voice low, the revelation settling like harbor fog lifting. The threat was their endgame, reclaim the air through you, choke the ports with old grudges, but we held the line. Your father's code, protection eternal, outlasted them. Ji-yeon leaned against the window, the glass cool against her forehead, watching the waves settle into rhythmic swells. The victory carried weight. Exposure of the foster network risked her old life, the injured a reminder of sacrifices, but the treasure gleamed clearer. Trust forged in the tunnel's dark, a protective pledge from Minho that felt like home, not cage. His hand found her shoulder, light, inviting rather than claiming, the human conflict resolving in quiet autonomy. Ambition tempered by prudence, suspicion yielding to bonds tested true. "Stay," he murmured, not a command but a vow. "Build with us. Haru needs a story like yours, legacy without the chains." She turned, meeting his gaze, the push-pull easing into balance. Kim nodded from his chair, a faint smile cracking his lines. The found family complete, loyalty outshining raw power. The adventure's spoils faded, no glittering manifests, just memories of rain-slick escapes and shared silences. Transformation etched in scars both seen and unseen. In the quiet epilogue of the storm's wake, Ji-yeon realized the true inheritance, not the ledger's shadows, but the light of chosen kin, enduring beyond the port's endless tides. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.